and then just ask the rest of the panel.
I think I just want to start with actually tying in to the previous point. I think in terms of, for those still in the EU, the sovereignty question was really kind of became interesting during the pandemic, where you saw so many member states going their own ways on lockdowns and just various pieces of government policy. So I think that put the sovereignty question in a slightly different light for a lot of EU member states, and sort of Brussels level too. Here in the UK, I mean, the biggest change since Brexit on the ground, I mean, it's got to be the queues, whether that pertains to, people going on holiday or the ability to get goods in and out of the country. It's, people always say, the effects of Brexit are largely intangible, if they may still be, large, but they're often intangible, whereas that's one you can see. And it really is quite stark in comparison, and it's very, very hard not to tie the queues at Dover to Brexit.
I think we're all very aware of the queues over the Easter weekends. I think we're also going to be commemorating that for a few years. But Colin, to you, what are the standout impacts for people on the ground?
Well, if we take the ground as being Northern Ireland, there is essentially an ongoing governance order collapse in the context of Northern Ireland that has not been fixed and that directly relates into Brexit. If you think back to the summer of 2016, there was still a position where Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionist Party were in government together in Stormont and cooperating. But quite quickly, it became impossible to see where their shared experience of being in governance together would be. If you set aside the sudden shock of the RHI scandal, which precipitated the Assembly and the Executive's collapse in early 2017, what was going on in the background at that point was that the DUP and Sinn Féin found it very difficult to perceive what their future was going to be in government together at that point. They had just secured things like the devolution of corporation tax to Northern Ireland. And that was supposed to mean that Northern Ireland would bring its corporation tax rate more into line with the tax rate in Ireland, and it would use that as a way to attract inward investment. But as soon as Northern Ireland's place in the European Union went up in the air with the Brexit referendum, that ability to create a positive environment for business in Northern Ireland disappeared with it. And we've been scrabbling around in the time since to put together anything that might look like a working program for government, but not even that, a working platform that the parties could agree to disagree on. Outside the small window that Luke has talked about of COVID and the executive functioning briefly, basically in the teeth of the COVID crisis, the parties have not been able to put together a shared or even common vision of what Northern Ireland after Brexit is going to look like. And if you can't have that, well, then you're going to have this, unsettled polity that frankly looks like a bit of a basket case for any idea of internal investment into it. And until things settle down into a post-Brexit environment, we're probably going to see a continued collapse of those arrangements and something like direct rule from Westminster continuing to exist.